Let's make history. As I mentioned on the last one, Williamsburg was actually a village within the town of Bushwick. Williamsburg is right off the East River, and there was a ferry service and a marketplace on present-day Grand Street where local farmers would come with their produce and either have it shipped across the river into Manhattan or go themselves into Manhattan and sell their goods. And around 1802, there was a judge whose name was Judge Richard Woodhull. And he inherited a bunch of land from his father. Part of that area was along what will become Metropolitan Avenue. Back then it was North 2nd Street. And he hired an American engineer to analyze the land and, survey the general area. And he wound up naming it in honor of this engineer whose name was Jonathan Williams. So it became the village of Williamsburg. On a side note, Judge Richard Woodhull, his son actually went on to become a prominent spy for George Washington during the American Revolutionary War. Because of its location, its proximity and accessibility to Manhattan, Williamsburg saw rapid development as its own village and eventually seeded from Bushwick and became its own city. In 1852, it even had its own mayor, Andrew Berry, who Berry Street is named after, obviously. Excuse me. And he was only mayor for about a year or two. And there was one more mayor before Williamsburg officially became part of Brooklyn. And that was one of the accomplishments that Mayor Andrew Berry had is, first off, dropping the H, because Williamsburg originally was spelled with an H at the end, and then he got Brooklyn incorporated. He got Williamsburg, incorporated into the greater Brooklyn area. After World War II and during World War II, Hasidic Jews whose family and community was decimated in the Holocaust flocked to Brooklyn south of Division Street. And to this day, Williamsburg has a large Hasidic Jewish population. In the 1960s, it became primarily a Puerto Rican neighborhood, starting off really in the early 20th century, but it really intensified during the 1950s and 60s. There were blacks who lived in Williamsburg as well, even going back to the Dutch era. As the Lower East Side began to get more and more crowded, people began to move first into Williamsburg. Eventually, they made their way into other neighborhoods in New York City, but first into Williamsburg. Then Williamsburg began to get just as crowded as the Lower East Side.